Beloved in the Seventh Adventist Church, beloved in the Seventh Adventist Church, this is a very urgent message with a message entitled, I suffer not a woman to teach, nor to usurp authority over a man. And the spiritual formation agenda within the Seventh Adventist Church. Beloved, this camp meeting 2017 at the Oakwood University Church, Pastor Benjamin Jones, the South Central Conference president, is commissioning two female pastors, Chaplain Kimberly Mann and commissioning Ifio and P. Quasey as pastors within the Seventh Adventist Church, along with ordaining 4 other ministers. Beloved, this is a great apostasy and aching in the camp that needs rectified by none other than Ted Wilson, General Conference President, beloved. He will rectify this fall at the annual council. He will change leadership in these unions and local conferences and divisions that allow for ordinating of women and commissioning women in gospel ministry. He will change working policy L, which allows for certain conferences to commission these female ministers and ordain these female pastors in certain unions and divisions that allow for it, beloved. Look at this statement here in page 64 of this book, Reaping the Whirlwind by Joe Cruz. Page 64, Reaping the Whirlwind by Joe Cruz. It says this, it says, in anticipation of his last-ditch effort to make God's special remnant lose confidence in the law, would it not be logical for Satan to infiltrate the church with uncommitted pastors as well as unconverted members? When viewed in the context of the age-long warfare, it is easy to see how he would attempt to such a long-range tactical ploy. Because we live literally in the final stages of this tremendous drawn-out drama, we become grandstand spectators of Satan's total strategy. Right now, he is pulling together all lines of influence, which he has manipulated, beloved. I'm trying to help you to see my face. It's hard to view my face from this view, beloved. I want you to see my face like my friend Pastor Lawrence McDonald said. To weaken the commandment keepers, we see a converging of many circumstances which could not be understood until now, because they appeared only as distressing side issues. Suddenly we see that they were all tied together and were being masterminded by the great adversary himself. Look once more at the amazing order of which the jigsaw puzzle begins to reveal. The isolated developments within the church seem to be small portions of giant patterns which is now approaching completion. It all makes sense in light of Satan's ultimate objectives. What better plan could he have devised than to dilute the spiritual standards solely by worldly wedges of compromise that grew bigger and bigger? At the same time, Satan explained the fears toward grace only, the finished work of the cross, and a downplay of sanctification. Some ministers were caught in the trend and were conditioned to accept new members for baptism without the fruits of full obedience. Under the influence of these unconverted ones and a worldly-oriented membership, the church was not prepared to cope with the explosive impact of the new theology, especially since it filtered through the weekly sermons of numerous young advocates of divergent views. My heart goes out to hundreds of faithful Adventists who have written me about their efforts to stem the relentless tide of apostasy. Beloved in the Adventist Church, we see this situation in women's ordination, women commissioning to gospel ministry. We see this situation in so many things, beloved, in the Adventist Church. We see this situation, beloved, with the new theology preaching that we can't overcome sin, we can't obey God's law, we can't become true Christians for this last hour, beloved. It's a great sin in this last day as Seventh Adventist Christians. Take off my glasses so you can see my eyes. In this last day, the Seventh Adventist Christians, beloved. It's so sad that we're teaching now that we can't put away sin, that we'll be sinning until Christ comes back in the clouds, and that women can be ordained and commissioned as pastors in our local Seventh Adventist churches. Let me read you a statement from this book called Spiritism in the Adventist Church. Spiritism in the Adventist Church by Colin Standish. Spiritism in the Adventist Church by Colin Standage. School called Heartland College in Virginia. He started a school called Spiritism in NLP, Neurolinguistic Programming, page 20, chapter 20, page 121. Let me read you the statement here, beloved. My face is kind of off for a second while I find the page, beloved. Neurolinguistic Programming, because Quasi teaches spiritual information here at Oakwood, and she's about to be commissioned as a pastor, so you need to see the dangers of what she's doing in our local churches. It states, further, the editor answers the question, does Lab 1 teach NLP therapy? With an emphatic no, of course. This is an instance of the proverbial case of asking the wrong question and thus providing an answer which is designed to calm the fears of the readers. The correct question should have been, do Lab 1 course utilize the principles of NLP? A truthful answer to that question would arouse our people to deep concern. The effects of this article were multiplied by its reproduction to the South Pacific Record, April 4th, 1992, when Brother C.R. Bennett of New Zealand wrote a letter of concern to the editor, Ibid, May 2nd, 1992. The editor responded in the same issue by stating, we're also concerned about the one-sided of view, so concerning the fact that henceforth we'll only consider publishing correct correspondence on this topic from those who have and state that they have attended Lab 1. It says this, the first page. In 1983, the National Association for Neurolinguistic Programming was found. The basis of neurolinguistic programming is riveted by the hypnosis principles of Dr. Milton Erickson. Ericksonian hypnosis claims to teach the best principles of therapeutic hypnosis with great danger. Ericksonian hypnosis teaches practitioners how to bypass the resistance of counselors by embedding therapeutic interventions in a seemingly casual conversation. Let us look in some of the bases of this neurolinguistic programming, magic and hypnosis. Some recommended books for reading in neurolinguistic programming are Level 1, Lewis and Packler, Magic Demystified. Level 2, Stephen Langston, Practical Magic. Level 3, Bandler's and Grindler's Patterns of Hypnotic Technique, and Grinders and Bandler's Transformation. Level 4, Bandler's and Grinders, The Structure of Magic 1 and 2. These books alone should be sufficient warning to even half-hearted Christians that this program is not established upon God's principles. The very nature of these books orients towards paganism. Many leading practitioners and teachers are skilled, trained, practicing hypnotherapists. Not only is a student trained in hypnosis, he is also trained in self-hypnosis. Of course, it is argued that such hypnosis is used in the appropriate therapeutic way by the person, but there are many warnings against hypnosis from the servant of the Lord. Neither one of you should study the science of hypnosis in which you have interested. To study the science is to pluck the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. God forbids you or any other mortal to learn or to teach such a science. My Creative Personality, Volume 2, page 760. Next page. Look at the statement right here. So the writer says, men and women are not to study the science of how to take captive the minds of those who associate with them. This is the science that Satan teaches. We are to resist everything of the kind. We are not to tamper with mesmerism and hypnotism. The science is one who lost his first estate and was cast out of the heavenly course. The theory of mind-controlling mind was originated by Satan to introduce himself as the chief worker to put human philosophy where divine philosophy should be. Of all the errors at the finding of acceptance among professing Christian people, none is more dangerous of deception than none more certain to separate man from God than is this. Innocent though it may appear, if exercised upon patience, it will tend to their destruction, not to restoration. Ibid, page 712, Ibid, page 713. In the neurolinguistic programs, advanced hypnotic techniques used are based upon the Ericksonian model. Deception. A second danger of neurolinguistics is deception. The process of neurolinguistics is designed to bypass decision-making, control the person, taken from one of the neurolinguistic program books, Frogs and the Princes, is this statement. If we had brought Linda up here and anchored her auditorily with voice tonalities, you have no idea what we did. The more covert you are, the better off you will be in your private practice. You can be very covert in the way you touch. you practice. You can be very cold when you touch. You can use tones of voice. You can use words like parent, child, and adult, or postures, gestures, expressions. Following Princes Richard Mandler and John Grineland, page 102, emphasis added. Manipulation associated with this exception is covert manipulation. Here is a typical example. Once I was lecturing to 250 fairly astute psychologists, being academic, talking about representational systems and books, and drawing equations in the middle of my academic lecture. I just walked up on the edge of the stage, looked up for a moment, and said, "That's weird." Then continued. A little later, I looked up and I did it again. Beloved in the Seventh Adventist Church, it's so sad that we are commissioning now female pastors like Kwesi and Kimberly Mann. Kwesi, who's a spiritual transformation teacher, she's no more than a witch doctor. She's teaching Ericksonian and Bandler and Grinders hypnotic teachings of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. She's a female pastor. The Bible says, "I suffer not a woman to teach, nor to usurp authority over a man." So she's bringing in female ordination and commissioning into our church, while bringing in neuro-linguistic programming and NLP, which is a Jesuit form of teaching that is made to destabilize the Reformation in the Protestant churches in these last days. She's not only bringing in female commissioning and ordination, but she's also bringing in spiritual formation, which is a wrong thing to bring in these last days to destabilize the Reformation. Ted Wilson, the General Conference president, against women's ordination, and he's also against spiritual formation as well. He's trying to revive and reform the Adventist church, and I say I with him. Also, look at this book right here, beloved. This book right here is called The Adventist Ordination Crisis. It's Biblical Authority or Cultural Conformity. And we just a statement from this book right quick. States this, it says, many people claim that because Ellen White was a prophetess, she had authority over male pastors and conference presidents, so women could serve as pastors because Ellen White served as a prophet. Look at the statement right here. No one has ever heard the claim the position of leader of the denomination. He has not provided that the burden of leadership shall rest upon a few men responsible to distribute among a large number of competent men. Every member of the church has a voice in choosing officers of the church. The church chooses the officers of the state conferences, delegates chosen by the state conferences, chosen by the officers of the union conferences, and delegates chosen by the union conferences choose the officers of the general conference. By this arrangement, every conference, every institution, every church, every individual, either directly or through representatives, has a voice in the election of the men who bear the chief responsibilities in the general conference. Neither then, which the church was just starting, nor since the work has grown to large proportions, during which time responsibilities have been widely distributed, has anyone heard the claim of the leadership of this people. It has been asserted that Ellen White was ordained as a minister, but that is not true. For various reasons, it was advantageous for the church to issue ministerial credentials to her, and this was first in 1871. Some of these say ordained minister, but in at least one instance, the word ordained was nearly struck through. The church had and has the category of credential for prophets, so utilized what it had, giving her the highest credentials, those of an ordained minister, but no ceremonial ordination was ever performed on Ellen White. Since there have been several female prophets, the fact that Ellen White was a female prophet is not a new thing in God's dealing with his people. It has not changed how God instructed his church to be organized. Does anyone really believe that Paul was not aware of these female prophets in Bible history when he was inspired by the Holy Spirit to limit the office of elder, bishop, overseer, not only in the past but also of his own day? In the very first same passage in which he sets out the principle of male spiritual headship, he also notes that women will sometimes prophesy in the church. Take it from 1 Corinthians 11, 3-5, it says, "I want you to know the head of every man is Christ, and the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Christ is God. Every man prophesying with his head covered dishonors his head, but every woman who prays or prophesies with her head uncovered dishonors her head." 1 Corinthians 11, 3-5. Again, here the principle of male spiritual headship is mentioned on the same breath with the fact that females will prophesy. Clearly, the fact that they were here are probably be female prophets does not change the gospel order than God has specified for his church on earth. Some argue I understand all that, but Ellen White was more than a prophet. She was a leader of the church. It is true, and Ellen White was instrumental in the founding of the church, but she was first and foremost a messenger of the Lord. Like the great majority of biblical prophets, Ellen White never held a formal position. She was never a pastor or a conference junior general conference president. In the day-to-day operation of the church, she did not have the power to hire or fire pastors, with the sole exception of her serving on the head of the directors of Madison College, founded on the site that she had selected, that having been shown in a vision, in a dream. Ellen White did not serve on governing boards or executive committees, in her own words, in her own day. Beloved in the Adventist Church, as you well see right here, Sister White was a prophet in the Adventist Church. She was a church leader. She founded the Adventist Church, but she had no spiritual headship over the church, like the pastors, conference presidents, and union presidents, and division presidents, and elders and deacons. And we need to go against these ladies that are trying to be pastors now, like Quaisa and Kimberly Mann, who are bringing contemplative prayer into our churches and schools. And the false prophets, they're Eastern Star Masonic Jesuits of the First Order. And Sister White talks about that in great contrast chapter called the French Reformation. The Jesuits have the formidable foes to stabilize the Protestant Reformation. Support Ted Wilson in his effort to revive and reform the Adventist Church's fall at the annual council, beloved. May not the happy Sabbath.